We're back with the last episode in the How to EQ Like a Pro series. This week we're going to be talking about vocals. Vocals are the most important part of most pieces of music, unless it's an instrumental, obviously. But I'm sure you're going to be excited about this one, so check it out. Hey everyone, welcome to the series on how to EQ like a pro. This week we're going to talk about vocals and how to get vocals to sit well in your mix. If you caught the other videos in this series, I talked about bass last week, we talked about the drum bus, and we talked about snares, claps, and kick drums. So all very essential instruments in the mix. Let's get into the vocals. Okay, I've got this Pro Tools session opened up, and I actually recorded these vocals yesterday from the day of recording this video. This is my friend Alexa, and we've been doing a lot of work together. She wrote these vocals over this deep house track that I just created a week and a half ago, and she absolutely crushed it. The reason why I wanted to show you this is because I wanted to show you good recordings, and then I want to show you another session that I worked on where I received the vocals and the differences, and we can talk about how to clean those up. So let's go ahead and play a little of this breakdown. I want to show you this breakdown part.
Listening to the touch.
These vocals are absolutely dry. There is no effects, no EQ, nothing. And let me mute this.
You might be gone, but love is what you lived on.
I haven't even cleaned these up, taken the breaths out, done all what I do, and it sounds great. That is the number one thing. The quality of your recording with vocals, or even the quality of the sample that you pick, say if it's off splice, is going to play a huge part in the end result of these vocals. So if you are recording your vocals, be sure to use a good microphone. Try to record in an acoustically treated space if you can. If you can't, understood. I did a lot of recording in my home studio in my living room back in the day. And number three, if you have access to a good mic preamp, it is helpful to use something. Even your interface has decent preamps. Technology these days is great. So it's definitely something that I recommend. Don't try to record vocals on your laptop or your phone unless they're like scratch tracks. I wouldn't recommend trying to make professional music doing that. Now, after you get these vocals recorded, there is a trick to mic placement that I will suggest that you pay attention to. Mic placement plays a huge part. You know, when we first started having her record, she was right up on the mic, and I told her, you need to back up a little bit. Look how far I am from this mic, and I still sound great. And that's part of actually getting good at recording, is when I told her to back up on this mic, she sounded silky. Now, the other thing is I paired her with a mic that works well with her voice. I tried a few mics on her, and I ended up going with the C414 by AKG, and it seems to be working very well with her. And once I get these all cleaned up,
but love is what you lived on.
It's going to sound great. Now, there is a little bit of sibilance in this, so I will always remind you to check for sibilance. It's very important that you check for sibilance because sibilance can be very bad, especially if you're trying to place your music on vinyl. That is one of the culprits that can be bad for vinyl. And I, as a mastering engineer, have to check for that when mastering for vinyl. So you could use something like a de-esser to get rid of that. Let's go ahead and use the FabFilter Pro DS, and you know, there's a great female preset. Now let's find an S. There's one right here.
Listening to the touch.
Let's just loop this.
Listening to the touch.
And look at default.
Listening to the
Look at that. Look at how much sibilance is coming out of that.
Listening to the touch.
It's a little much, so you could back that off.
Listening to the touch.
But that alone will clean up your vocals a lot. I highly recommend checking out using sibilance, and that is a basic form of EQ. It's all it's doing is notching out certain frequencies, and it's running between 7 and 14K with it being, yeah. You can adjust this if you'd like and go a little narrower.
Listening to the touch. Listening to the touch.
But she's
listening to the
sibilance
touch.
is actually sitting
listening to the touch.
right there.
Listening to
So bringing it down a little works on her. You could go wider.
Listening to the touch.
A little too wide.
Listening to the touch.
So sibilance, huge part, and most people have a little sibilance. Even I have a little sibilance on this microphone. Check for sibilance, even in your samples from Splice. Okay, I just loaded up a session here from a friend of mine. I just did this remix a few weeks ago, and it has this female vocalist here from San Diego. And unfortunately, I didn't have the pleasure of recording this in my studio. Her vocals are good, but the recording wasn't the best. Not knocking anything, you know, but I had to work with what I was given. That's gonna happen to you as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and solo these vocals a little bit and play you some of this. This is gonna be coming out soon, so stay tuned. It's a Fresco Bar and Egg Wax remix of Pleasure Delay by Sestoda. And
I want you to take me away.
the crazy thing,
Let's fly away.
here's the vocals by themselves.
Let's fly. I see you looking at me across the room.
And so, as you could see, first thing I did was I actually used a de-esser,
I want you to take me away.
which we just spoke about.
All night. All night.
And the funny thing is I ended up using another de-esser.
I want you to take
I guess I just felt like it needed more. I took a ton of sibilance out of these vocals. And they used heavy auto-tune. I actually had access to the Pro Tools session where the vocals were recorded, and there was a ton of auto-tune. So that could have been adding to the sibilance. They were using it to control her vocals, and it really altered the sound of the original vocals, the way they used it. But it needed it. At least in my mix, it needed that much work. So that's my first suggestion, once again, is check for sibilance. Okay, my next suggestion for EQing vocals is to carve space. And normally I would carve space before a lot of the processing. But in this instance, for some odd reason, I actually put my EQ after some of my processing. And that's pretty unique for me. I usually like to EQ first, and I talk about that in some of my previous videos. But I think it's because I ended up finding that it worked better for this mix. And there's no rules, so remember that. So let's look at what I did with this EQ. So it looks like I had a shelf at 441 Hertz, and I did a few notches here. And you gotta listen to these in context with the track. So let's go ahead and play that. So it's currently off. I only have the de-essers on. Now, the reason I probably put this EQ after my processing is because the saturation that I added, and I'm going to get into saturation next. The EQ carving is obviously important. You want to carve space with the rest of the mix, but with these vocals, they were just so unique. So I ended up putting the EQ after. Saturation is the next thing that I suggest you put on some vocals. Vocals can use some saturation. It'll add some extra harmonics. Now, mind you, the problem with these vocals was they were already so enriched in highs and lacking some of those low mids, and maybe that auto-tune didn't help that, because I heard the original vocals and I had to snipe a piece out of the track right here. So let's take a listen to what these vocals sounded like. And there's a filter on that, so unfortunately you're hearing that. These vocals sound a little bit more natural because I had to pull those straight from the Pro Tools session, but I still ended up taking a bunch of lows out of those just because of the section of the song that it was in. But as you can see, I was getting into the saturation piece, and this track is so unique. It's so great to show you how much, how I got from point A to point B with the vocals here. So I'm gonna solo these vocals out again. Turn on this black box. I love the black box. Look at how much that brought out the vocals. Saturation is great, but it also enhanced some of those high frequency problems that already existed, which is why I ended up placing my EQ after the saturation and the de-essers in the chain. The next thing I want to talk about is compression, and compression can really help vocals. I'm an avid user of automation, and I prefer to sometimes automate vocals if I can. In this instance, let's see if I actually did. No, I didn't. They were already pretty compressed, and so what I just did is I just wanted to top them off with a little leveling. And I used an LA2A, I used the gray version, and I have a series on the LA2A, so you can check that out. I'll leave you a link. LA2As are great, I love them. They're one of my favorite compressors to use. And let's turn this thing, this is before. This is after. It's just tapping those vocals, just a tad. Once again, before. And after. So let's take these four things off. That's what we started with. To de-esser, black box, saturation, compression. Added some more de-essing. Just worked for the music that I have behind it. Then I went into carving space, so I can get that warmth right out of it. And that is how I process the vocals on this remix. And these tactics apply to most vocals. Now, if you get a great recording, you may not need to do all of that. That's why I wanted to show you a really good recording. Once I clean those vocals up, I'm not going to need to do a lot to those. I'm just going to do some volume control, maybe a little bit of saturation. Like I said, I'll put some Sibilance on Alexa. In this instance, I had to do a lot more processing to get the vocals enhanced where I wanted them to be, but then I also enhanced the high-end problem, so then I had to carve out all that space. So you need to take everything on a case-by-case basis. That's very important when you're doing your mixes. I want to show you another trick that you can do with vocals, and it involves sidechaining. You can actually use sidechain compression to duck other instruments out of the way, and you got to be clever about this. I didn't do it on this track, but I went ahead into this breakdown and added to this little pad that I have a compressor, Ableton stock compressor, and also track spacer. I talk about track spacer in my sidechain video. I'll leave you a link to that so you can check that out. And let's go ahead and sidechain just the vocal bus. I've got a lot going on here, but there it is right there. And we'll do the same thing right here, vocal bus. So I'm gonna do one at a time. Okay, let's start with the compressor here. We'll drop this down. That's a little much, but I wanna show you what it's doing. What it's doing is it's ducking that pad when the vocals hit. And you can lower the ratio if you want less. Change the attack and release if you want to play with that. I'm not here to teach you about compression. But before, and you see how it comes up and it comes down. So this is a bit extreme, but the purpose was to show you how you can use this tactic in your mixes. Another way you could do it is with track spacer. And the cool thing about track spacer is it's not just a compressor, it's a bit more than that. I talk about it in my previous video. You can limit the frequency that you want it to look at, and then, so you could literally get the range of the vocals, and you hear it ducking the pad the more I take it down. So I'd probably just use a little bit of that, but that's another great tactic that you can use when trying to process your vocals and get your vocals to sit right and EQ them in your mix. Thank you for watching this video on how to EQ your vocals like a pro. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and the bell notification will keep you up to date. My name is Freddie from Distinct Mastering. Next week, I'm going to get into how to create your own kick drums. It's going to be a unique video. And if you missed last week's video on how to EQ your bass, I'll leave you a link here. Thank you very much.